to cure my supposed possessiveness. My wife would toss a signed divorce agreement at me every time. She spent the night with her first love instead of coming home. In just 6 months, I had collected 99 of them in my drawer. When the 100th one arrived, I overheard him ask her, his eyes red with emotion, "I'm divorced now. Will you still marry me?" After a moment of silence, she answered with conviction, "I will." In that instant, I knew it was time to give back the title of husband. The next day, I took a cab to the old Thompson family estate. The 6-year agreement was up. My debt of gratitude was paid, and it was time for me to leave. My voice was quiet, but resolute. Seeing that my mind was made up, Mr. Thompson could only sigh. "It's been hard on you all these years. Before you go, you can ask me for anything." I was silent for a long time before finally speaking. "I want your blessing for Chloe and Julian to be together. You originally sent me to her to help her get over Julian. But now 6 years have passed, and you've seen it for yourself. Perhaps true love can't be broken apart." At my words, Mr. Thompson heaved another heavy sigh. His eyes filled with weariness and resignation. Fine. I'm getting old. I won't meddle in their affairs any longer. Let them do as they please. As for the divorce, you'll have to talk to Chloe about it yourself." I nodded, gave the old man a respectful bow, and then turned and walked toward the gate. Back at the house, I pulled a divorce agreement from the drawer. In the signature space, Chloe's name was written in a fluid, elegant script. For a moment, I could picture her signing it all those years ago. She had looked at me without a trace of emotion, her expression distant as she told me, "Ethan, I know you're madly in love with me, but my heart belongs to someone else. I only married you because of family pressure. If you ever want a divorce, just sign this. You'll be free to leave whenever you want." Now, I picked up the pen and without a moment's hesitation signed my name on the line for the husband. Just as I finished the last stroke, the door swung open. I turned to see Chloe standing in the doorway, holding her son Leo's hand. The two of them, one tall and one small, shared the same air of refined dignity, as if cast from the same mold. Leo's face was a mask of impatience. "Why did you call so many times? Where's your soup?" I replied. "It's not ready yet," he grumbled. "All you do is stay home and do chores, and you can't even get that right." I didn't argue with him, simply replying calmly, "The soup is in the kitchen." With his answer, he didn't waste a second. Letting go of Chloe's hand and rushing off to the kitchen, Chloe stepped forward, her tone cool. "Leo is still young. I'll talk to him about his attitude." I paid her words no mind. I had raised Leo since he was a baby, though he had always been distant with me. He used to at least call me Dad. But ever since Julian returned, I don't know what he told Leo. And now our son was convinced I was the villain who kept him and his mother apart. His attitude toward me had hit rock bottom. He wouldn't even look me in the eye, much less have a civil conversation. I shook my head. "That won't be necessary." After a moment, I looked at her calmly. "Chloe, I've signed the divorce papers. I don't want custody, and I don't want any money. I'll be gone once the 1-month waiting period is over." Before I could finish, Leo came jogging back, happily clutching a thermos. His eager voice completely drowned me out. "Mom, let's hurry and go see Uncle Julian. He must be so scared all alone in his hospital room." Chloe finally seemed to register my presence, looking at me with a blank expression. "What did you just say?" "I didn't catch that." She said it so casually. I looked at her, remembering how her mind had clearly been elsewhere moments before. She hadn't been listening to me at all, even though she was home. Her thoughts were still with Julian at the hospital. Realizing this, I didn't bother repeating myself. I just shook my head and said softly, "It was nothing." Since she didn't care about me, it didn't matter if she knew I was leaving or not. I watched the two of them disappear through the doorway and said nothing to stop them. Their trip would last for several days, which gave me the time I needed. I used the time to submit an application to the National Research Institute. I earned my doctorate at 22. If I hadn't married into the Thompson family to repay a debt, I would have become one of the nation's brightest minds. After all, several of my peers from that time have since won Nobel Prizes. Now with my debt repaid and no other family to speak of, I just wanted to fulfill the ambitions I had set aside. A few days after I submitted my application, my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. It was an unknown number. The voice on the other end was filled with surprise and excitement, and I quickly recognized it as an old colleague. "Ethan, are you really coming back? The news is already all over our circle. You are always the most gifted among us. And then you just vanished. Professor Albright never stopped talking about what a loss it was. When he heard you were returning, he was so thrilled he couldn't sleep for days. We're all so happy for you. It looks like the entire academic world is about to be shaken up. I caught the teasing note in his voice and smiled. A genuine smile that I hadn't felt in a long time. Don't worry. From now on, I'm dedicating all my time to my research. I'm done with everything else. Before I could finish, the door was pushed open, and Chloe and Leo's voices rang out in unison. Done with what? I hadn't expected them to return so suddenly, much less to overhear my call. My heart leapt into my throat. I quickly hung up and turned to face them, at me with hiding the surprise in my eyes, and keeping my expression neutral. It's nothing. I was just cleaning up and found some old things I don't need anymore. I was planning to throw them out. Chloe still looked suspicious. All of it. Her eyes bored into me, as if trying to see right through me. But I remained calm, showing no sign of guilt. And she finally relaxed her gaze, apparently deciding she was overthinking things. Having eased their suspicions, I subtly changed the subject. What brings you to back? At that, Leo didn't hold back, immediately starting to complain and give orders. I hated the food in the hotel, so he came back. Now are you going to make dinner or not? I want barbecue ribs. I frowned and glanced at Chloe, but she just stood there silently, clearly sharing her son's sentiment. I pressed my lips together, turned toward the kitchen, and suddenly felt a wave of self-pity. For years, I had been both a husband and a housekeeper, personally attending to their every need, terrified of doing anything that might displease them. In the end, I had truly become nothing more than their live-in help, with no respect and not a single word of thanks. After a long time working alone, I finally brought the meal to the table, seeing them sit down naturally next to each other. I took a seat on the opposite side of the table and made a suggestion. We should bring the old staff back. When Chloe and I first moved into this mansion, it was fully staffed, but their cooking was never to her taste, and their care never measured up to mine. Besides, Chloe didn't like having strangers in the house, so she sent them all back to the main estate. Chloe furrowed her brow. This was the first time I had ever asked for anything. She looked at me puzzled. I looked at her and explained calmly. I'll be leaving soon, and there will be no one to take care of you. It's best you start getting used to it. At my words, her frown deepened. Leaving? Where are you going? Leo finally put down his fork and looked at me, a flicker of contempt in his eyes. Are you mad because we've been busy taking care of Uncle Julian? But where would you even go if you left us? Chloe's gaze was intense. She was thinking that I had never held a job, had no work experience, no credentials. Without the Thompson family, without her, where could I possibly go? She was certain I would never leave. Neither of them gave the conversation a second thought. I didn't bother explaining further. I just sighed quietly. The meal ended quickly, and the subject wasn't brought up again. In the dead of night, Chloe and I lay in the same bed, both wide awake. I was used to this life, sharing a bed but living in different worlds, always keeping my distance from her. I closed my eyes and slowed my breathing. The mattress beside me dipped, and a sudden warmth pressed against my side. She reached down, her arm wrapping naturally around my waist, her hot breath on my neck. I knew what she wanted, and was about to push her away, when I heard her whisper a gentle name. Julian. The love in her voice was so thick. You could feel it, instantly. My mind flashed back through the years. Every time we were close, every time passion took over, the name she cried out was always his. Julian. A wave of revulsion washed over me, and I shook her away forcefully, the sudden movement snapping her back to reality. Confusion flickered in her eyes. She had no idea what was wrong. Was it really just because she had said his name? It wasn't the first time after all, and she had told me from the very beginning that she loved someone else. So what was I making a scene about now? I could read the questions in her eyes, so I simply got out of bed, grabbing a comforter. I headed for the door. I'm sleeping in the guest room, I said without looking back. Chloe couldn't find the words to ask me to stay. She just sat on the bed, watching my retreating back as I left without a second thought. A complex emotion flickered across her usually stoic face. In the days that followed, neither of us made the first move to reconcile, and our relationship remained in this cold, resentful state. This continued until Leo's birthday, for which Chloe threw a massive party. Many guests were in attendance, including Julian. I sat in a corner watching my wife and son. They were both hovering around Julian, doting on him, attending to his every need. The three of them were so intimate and affectionate. They looked more like a family than we ever did. A few guests approached with champagne flutes, striking up a conversation. Miss Thompson. Mr. Thompson. Young Mr. Thompson. Hearing them addressed that way, Chloe froze for a second. It was the fifth, or sixth time that day. Someone had made the same mistake. She instinctively glanced in my direction, and saw me quietly lower my head. A pang of something soft went through her, and she took it upon herself to clarify. Julian isn't my husband. He's my brother. The guests finally understood and quickly apologized. As they walked away, they began to whisper among themselves. I saw Miss Thompson hovering around. That Julian fellow all night. I just assumed he was her husband. So, where is the real Mr. Thompson? Someone in the know pointed them in my direction. That's him over there. Upon seeing me, one of them remarked, wow, that's just sad. At his own son's birthday party, his wife and kid are fawning all over another man. I acted as if I hadn't heard a thing. My face a calm mask. When it was time for presents, I walked over and handed Leo a key. I locked your gift in the safe. You can open it to see what it is. Inside that safe were birthday gifts I had prepared for the next several decades of his life. After all, once the divorce was final, I wouldn't be seeing him again. But when I held out the key, Leo didn't even glance at it. He simply knocked it out of my hand, tilting his chin up with a dismissive air. I don't have time for that. Chloe frowned. Don't speak to your father that way. After her quiet reproach, she turned to me. He's just a kid. Don't take it to heart. I forced a silent, bitter smile. He was just a kid. Yes, but that was no excuse to treat his own father with such contempt. How little she must think of me to use that same excuse every single time. As we spoke, Leo had already run over to Julian, his eyes shining with anticipation. Uncle Julian, what did you get me? Julian smiled and produced his gift. A paperback storybook. It wasn't even wrapped. Clearly a last-minute purchase. But Leo was ecstatic, grinning so wide his eyes nearly disappeared. Thank you, Uncle. I love it. I'll treasure it forever. After the presents, it was time for the cake. Leo stood before the expensive confession, closed his eyes, and clasped his hands together. A second later, he spoke, his childish voice carrying across the room. I wish Uncle Julian could be my daddy, so he and Mommy can be together forever. A stunned silence fell over the party, followed by a wave of shocked murmurs. Chloe was stunned, but Leo was unfazed. He just blinked, pouting defiantly. Don't you want to be with Uncle Julian? Mommy, I saw them in your study. Your drawer is full of love letters you wrote to him, and you kept all of his pictures. And in your books on the shelf, you've written his name on every single page. Ethan is just a housekeeper. Why can't you and Uncle Julian just be together? At these words, Julian whipped his head around to look at Chloe, his eyes instantly welling with tears, his rims turning red. So all these years, Chloe, you never forgot me. Chloe looked away, flustered, and didn't answer. But Julian pressed her. I just need an answer. Chloe, as he spoke the last word, a tear finally escaped and rolled down his cheek, landing like a heavy weight on her heart, and melting away her defenses. The love she had suppressed for so long came pouring out. Yes, she said, the words she had hidden in her heart finally escaping. I never forgot you for a single moment. As her confession hung in the air, the room fell completely silent. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the hall. Everyone's head snapped toward the sound. Someone had knocked over the champagne tower. Unfortunately, Julian was standing right in its path. Chloe and Leo cried out in unison. Julian. I watched frozen as they scrambled in a panic toward Julian, who was too stunned to move, standing between them and him. I became an obstacle in their path. They shoved me aside forcefully, and I stumbled backward, losing my balance. A moment later, the cascade of champagne and glass crashed down on me, and my head swam. My dazed eyes focused on the scene in front of me. Chloe and Leo, their faces etched with worry, hovering over Julian. Uncle, your hand is bleeding. Julian, I'm taking you to the hospital. Without a moment's hesitation, Chloe helped Julian to his feet and started for the exit. Leo scurried after them on his short legs, struggling to keep up but not complaining. Julian's arm was draped around Chloe's shoulders. He had only a tiny cut on his forearm, but to them, it was a grievous wound. They hurried past me, and as they did, Chloe's eyes flickered in my direction. Seeing the cuts and bruises covering me, she seemed to remember that she had pushed someone. She paused for a fraction of a second, looked at me and said without a hint of apology, "I have to get Julian to the hospital. You should probably take a cab and get yourself checked out." I opened my mouth, but before I could say a word, they were gone, left lying in the wreckage. I managed to dial 911. The ambulance arrived quickly. I was on a gurney, about to be wheeled into the air, when Chloe and Leo came rushing back. Their faces were frantic. "Julian has a clotting disorder. The bleeding won't stop. And he's passed out. The hospital is low on his blood type. And I remember you're a match. You have to come donate blood now." As she spoke, Chloe reached out to pull me from the gurney. A doctor quickly intervened, looking concerned. "Miss Thompson, Mr. Miller's own injuries are more severe. He's too weak to donate blood right now." But his words had no effect on Chloe. Her brow furrowed in annoyance, and she didn't stop. Even Leo chimed in, pouting with complete indifference. How can he even compare to Uncle Julian? A chill ran through my veins. I turned my head, trembling, to look at them. They met my gaze without a hint of shame. I was used to their indifference, but hearing those words still sent a sharp pain through my chest. For 6 years, I had devoted myself to caring for them. I never expected them to love me the way they loved Julian. But how could they be so cruel? They dragged me stumbling to the donation room. The needle slid into my vein, but the sting was nothing compared to the ache in my heart. As the bag filled, dizziness washed over me again, and I could feel the color draining from my face. I couldn't stand it any longer and tried to get up. A shadow fell over me, and a hand pressed my arm firmly back down. I turned to see Chloe and Leo on either side of me holding me in place. Chloe spoke just a little more to be safe for Julian. As soon as she finished, Leo added his own encouragement. "Yeah, take more. Take as much as you need. Just make sure Uncle Julian is okay." Their faces were masks of pure anxiety for Julian. They paid no attention to me, the person actually giving blood, only urging the nurse to take more. Already weak from my injuries, I finally passed out. When I came to, I was surprised to find Chloe and Leo waiting by my bedside. When she saw I was awake, a complex emotion flickered in Chloe's cool eyes. After a moment, she was the first to speak. "I didn't know you were anemic. Why didn't you say anything?" I gave a bitter laugh. "You dragged me here to donate blood. When was I supposed to explain? Besides, even if I had told you, would it have stopped you?" My question was met with silence. They didn't have to answer. The truth was obvious. They still would have forced me. Just like when they dragged me here. My own wounds were still fresh, and the doctor had warned them I was too weak. "Es justa." How had they responded then? Her lips parted, and for the first time, her cool voice held a trace of guilt. "I was wrong this time. I'm sorry. Ask for anything and I'll give it to you." I closed my eyes and answered in a hoarse voice. "What I wanted most. I already have." Chloe cleared her throat, her expression suddenly awkward. Seeing the look on my face, she seemed to have a moment of realization. In her mind, I was still the man who loved her more than life itself, who would do anything just for a single glance from her. She assumed that what I wanted most was her and her marriage, but only I knew I wasn't talking about any of that. I was talking about my freedom. After a moment's hesitation, she opened her mouth to speak again, but just then a nurse came in. "Miss Thompson, Mr. Clark is away." Hearing this, Leo couldn't sit still. He jumped to his feet and started rushing Chloe. "Mom, let's go. He's fine now. Why are we still here? Look at him. His color is back. He was probably just faking it for attention. We should go see Uncle Julian. He hates pine and he lost so much blood. He needs us right now." With Leo tugging at her sleeve, Chloe stood up with a sigh. She paused at the doorway and looked back at me, a hint of resignation in her voice. "I'll be back to check on you later." Then she turned and left. And this time she didn't look back. And she never did come back. As I was resting, my phone buzzed with a new message. I opened it. It was a picture from Julian. In the photo, Chloe was holding a bowl of soup, her eyes filled with a tenderness so deep you could drown in it. Another photo showed Leo at the foot of the bed, dutifully massaging Julian's legs. A series of iMessages from Julian followed. "You saw what happened at the party. Chloe's heart is still mine. Your son adores me. You're nothing but a housekeeper. It's time for you to step aside." His taunts landed, but they failed to stir any emotion in me. I paused, then typed a short reply. "Don't worry. Soon, very soon, they'll both be all yours." He responded almost instantly. What's that supposed to mean? But no matter how many more questions or messages he sent, I ignored him. A few days later, I had fully recovered. Chloe came to pick me up on the day of my discharge. Julian was being discharged at the same time. After we finished the paperwork and headed to the car, Chloe hesitated for a second as she opened the front passenger door. Julian walked up with a wide grin, took her free hand, and gestured to the open door with an air of casual intimacy. Chloe, did you open that for me? She nodded. But her eyes drifted uncontrollably toward me. She must have wondered how I would react. Would I be angry? Hurt? Both. What she clearly didn't expect was for me to calmly open the back door for myself. Maybe it was because she told me from the start that she loved someone else. And I, in my foolish love for her, had spent all these years being obedient, never fighting for anything, never demanding anything. Just like now, knowing her heart belonged to Julian. I wouldn't insist on playing the part of her husband in public, but, for some reason, a strange, unsettling feeling washed over Chloe. Just as I was about to get in, Julian suddenly spoke, his voice laced with frustration. Chloe, damn it. I think I left my locket in the room. It's the one you gave me for my 18th birthday. His words immediately captured the attention of both Chloe and Leo. I'll go get it for you, Chloe said, turning back toward the hospital. You wait here. Seeing her go, Leo quickly ran after her. Mom will go too. Their figures vanished into the crowd. Julian turned back to me, his chin tilted in a sneer. You've got some nerve sticking around after all this. Ethan, if I were you, I'd have tucked my tail between my legs and disappeared by now. I had no time for his theatrics and no desire to listen to him, so I didn't even spare him a glance. My indifference seemed to enrage him, and he began spewing a stream of insults, which I continued to ignore. Then I heard the sharp crack of a slap. I turned my head to see a red handprint blooming on Julian's cheek. He looked at me, his eyes welling with tears. Ethan, whatever was between Chloe and me is in the past. If you don't like me, I can stay away. Why did you have to hit me? A second later, Chloe and Leo were on us like a storm. They shoved me back hard. Seeing Julian's tear-streaked face, Leo flew into a rage. He ran up to me and started hitting me with his small fists. Just because you had to give some blood. You're going to hurt Uncle Julian. You're evil. I wasn't expecting Leo to attack me. He must have truly hated me, because he put all his strength into those punches and they stung. When Leo finally seemed to run out of steam, Chloe stopped him, her face a cold mask. When she looked at me, her eyes were like ice, devoid of any emotion. I couldn't tell what hurt more, my face or my heart. When I finally found my voice, it came out hoarse. Chloe, Leo, I didn't hit him. There are security cameras everywhere. You can check the footage if you don't believe me. But neither of them listened. They helped Julian into the car, one on each side, and drove off without a backward glance, lowered by leaving me standing there in a cloud of dust. I let out a bitter self-mocking laugh. What was the point of trying to explain myself when Julian was involved? I had been a fool to even try. When I got home, the house was empty. I knew Chloe and Leo were with Julian, looking around the lifeless mansion. I checked the calendar and remembered the divorce waiting period would be over in 3 days. I could finally be completely free of them. From then on, my life would be my own, and I would have nothing more to do with them. 3 days until my departure, Chloe and Leo still hadn't returned. I received a video. In it, Chloe, who had never so much as boiled water, had personally cooked an entire feast. The perpetually spoiled Leo was peeling fruit and feeding it to Julian. In my 6 years of marriage, I never knew Chloe could cook, or that Leo could be so attentive. I turned off the video, slid the wedding ring from my finger after 6 long years, and pulled out the collection of Leo's childhood drawings I had kept in my nightstand. I threw them all in the trash. You were my everything. I love you. So I planted this entire field for you. Do you like it? Leo tugged on his sleeve, holding up a small purple bracelet. Uncle, this is for you. I spent a long time picking the prettiest flowers to make it. I watched the video with a calm expression. Then I went through the house, gathering all the gifts I had ever given to Chloe and Leo. They were covered in dust. Most had never even been opened. I tossed them all into the fireplace and watched them burn. When they left, I received a third video. It showed Chloe and Leo at an auction, spending lavishly on Julian's behalf. Anything he even glanced at, no matter the price, Chloe would buy for him. If Julian so much as frowned, Leo would rush to warm his hands or feed him a piece of fruit. They only had eyes for him. I switched off the video, my face impassive, and went out to file the final divorce papers. When I returned, I began erasing every trace of my existence from that house. On the day I was set to leave, I had all my bags packed. Just as I was about to walk out the door, Chloe and Leo burst in. The first words out of her mouth were a demand. Today is Julian's birthday. You need to go and apologize for hitting him the other day. I stood perfectly still, my expression calm, and simply looked at them. For some reason, both Chloe and Leo felt their hearts begin to race, a sense of panic rising within them. You were the one in the wrong. Don't you think you should apologize? Chloe demanded. As soon as Chloe spoke, Leo seemed to find his courage, clutching her hand and shining in. That's right. You hit Uncle Julian. So, you have to say you're sorry. I continued to just look at them, saying nothing. Just when they both assumed I would stubbornly refuse, I turned and spoke. I understand. You to go on ahead. Chloe stared at me for a moment. Then her brow furrowed. You're not coming with us, I replied. Since it's a party, I should change into a suit and clean up a bit. You know how much you hate waiting. Besides, it's Julian's birthday. I'm sure he'd want you there from the very start. My calm, logical explanation left her speechless. Leo shot me a few disdainful looks. You just cook all day. What do you need to get dressed up for? I stopped walking, and my gaze darkened. A flicker of fear crossed Leo's eyes, and he fell silent, annoyed at being silenced. He grabbed Chloe's hand to leave, but I called out to them again. They turned to see me emerge from the bedroom with a gift box. This is my present for Julian, I said, holding it out to them. Please give it to him for me when it's time. And remember, you have to play it for everyone right then and there. Inside was the security footage from the hospital. Since they wouldn't look at the truth, I would show it to everyone else. I made sure to emphasize the words right then and there. Though Chloe seemed confused, she agreed. She took the gift, and the two of them turned to leave once more. Suddenly, I called out his name. Leo, he turned back, his face already a mask of impatience, and I said softly, Goodbye. I paused, then looked at the elegant woman beside him and said my final farewell. Goodbye, Chloe. She turned back to look at me. I was standing under a lamp, silhouetted by the light, so she couldn't make out my expression, only the faint outline of a smile. She seemed startled. When had I become so thin? I looked as if a strong gust of wind could carry me away, out of the Thompson house, out of her life, entirely. But she quickly dismissed the thought. I loved her too much. How could I ever leave? I hadn't left in 6 years. Anyone else might leave, but not me. She forcefully suppressed the strange panic rising in her chest, nodded, and then holding the gift box in one hand and Leo's in the other, she walked out the door. Only after I watched them leave did I look away and go back inside. I grabbed my packed suitcase and walked out of the mansion. At the curb, I hailed a cab, got in, and gave the driver my destination. The car pulled away, heading in the opposite direction of Julian's party. Goodbye, Chloe. Goodbye, Leo. Meanwhile, in her own car, speeding across town, Chloe felt a strange sense of unease. She kept glancing back, checking to see if I was following. Her eyes fell on the gift box in her hand, and she frowned, making her deliver his gift for him. Just how late was he planning to be? How long could it possibly take to change clothes and wash up? She tried to recall how long it usually took me to get ready. But, as she thought back over their 6 years of marriage, she realized I rarely ever dressed up at all. Maybe Leo was right in my life. Really was just cooking and cleaning. Or maybe I just didn't care about my appearance. She couldn't remember. When the car finally stopped, Leo waited for a moment, and when Chloe didn't move, he opened the door himself and hopped out. Seeing she still wasn't getting out, he poked his head back and untugged on her sleeve. Mom, we're here. We have to go find Uncle Julian. He called to her a few more times, and when she still didn't respond, he raised his voice until it was shrill. Chloe finally snapped out of her daze. She looked out the window at the gates and realized they had arrived at Julian's mansion. She got out of the car, clutching the gift box, a strange melancholy settling over her. Leo took her hand, sniffing unhappily. Mommy, what were you thinking about so hard? The question made her realize that for the entire drive, her thoughts had been consumed by one person. May was the one making her so distracted. A strange feeling pricked at her. Leo, seeing her zone out again, tugged her hand impatiently. She shook her head as if to clear it. It's nothing. Her answer was dismissive, but Leo was too excited about seeing his uncle to press the issue. Still, For some reason, ever since we had parted ways, her heart had been pounding in her chest. She felt a profound unease, as if something vital was being ripped from her, something she couldn't grasp. The feeling didn't fade, not even when she saw Julian in the grand ballroom. She kept glancing toward the entrance, growing more and more agitated as time passed. Julie unnoticed her anxiety, but couldn't figure out its source. After racking his brain, he was left with only the most unlikely possibility. A vicious light glinted in his eyes. If I was going to be so stubborn. Ignoring all his hints to step aside and now, pulling stunts to get Chloe's attention, and he would just have to give me a special gift of his own. Julian looked up, his bright, charming smile back in place. He walked over to Chloe, glass in hand. Chloe, you seem distracted. Ethan still isn't here. Is everything all right? If you're worried, you should go find him. It's okay if you're not here for my party. He sounded so considerate. But there was an undercurrent of hurt in his voice that was impossible to miss. Chloe's heart softened, and her expression relaxed. What could he possibly be doing? It's your birthday. Of course I'm going to stay with you. Leo chimed in, sidling up to him with a grin. Yeah, Uncle Julian. Nothing is more important than your birthday. Don't worry. We're not going anywhere. And when that man finally shows up, we'll make him apologize to you in front of everyone. It wasn't the first time Leo had refused to call me his father. In fact, Chloe had encouraged it. But, for some reason, hearing Leo call me that man just now sent a sharp spike of annoyance through her. She opened her mouth to scold him. The sight of Julian and Leo getting along so well made the words die in her throat, leaving her with an uncomfortable choked feeling. After a moment, she sighed. Let's just head into the party. Soon it was time for presents. A parade of extravagant gifts was presented to Julian, feeding his vanity. When it was Chloe's turn, she thought for a moment, then brought out the box I had given her. This is from Ethan, she announced. He said it has to be played for everyone right now, so let's see his first. She opened the box, revealing a small USB drive. She handed it to a member of the staff to set it up. Julian didn't object. He was curious to see what kind of game I was playing. He held his head high, a look of concealed contempt on his face. Then the large screen in the center of the room flickered to life, and every eye in the room turned toward it. A loading bar crept toward 100%. Everyone, not just Julian, was wondering what the man who had clung to Chloe for 6 years, could possibly have to show at Hurt Rue Love's birthday party. A montage of our happy moments together. But, what happy moments? Everyone in New York knew the CEO of the Thompson Corporation was in love with her adoptive brother. Her husband was just part of a business arrangement. Maybe it was a video of well wishes. They would all just laugh at my pathetic attempt to seem magnanimous. The loading bar finally finished, and an image appeared on the screen. It looked like security footage. A confused murmur went through the crowd. What is this? It looks like a security camera. What is he doing showing security footage? As the guests whispered among themselves, Julian, who was on the small stage, saw the familiar setting and his face paled. It was footage from the hospital parking garage from the day he had framed me. Chloe didn't recognize it at first, but then she saw us appear on screen. Herself. Julian, Leo, and me. It hadn't been that long ago. She and Leo had just been demanding. I apologized for that very day. The memory came flooding back, and they both understood. Julian shrieked, "Turn it off. Turn it off now." He grabbed the nearest glass and hurled it at the screen. The staff, by his outburst, moved to shut it down, but Chloe stopped them. Leo looked at Julian, confused by his extreme reaction. Neither he nor Chloe had ever questioned what happened. In their minds, Julian was gentle and kind. He would never be capable of framing someone. So their first reaction to seeing the video was anger at me. They had only wanted a simple apology, and in response, I was making a public spectacle. But what could I possibly gain from that? Leo didn't think it through, though still confused. He tried to comfort Julian. Don't worry, Uncle Julian. If he wants to make a scene, let him. Does he really think this will ruin your birthday? That's pathetic. Let him play it. Everyone will see just how evil he really is. He said this indignantly, completely missing the strange looks on the faces of Chloe and the other guests, who would be willing to destroy their own reputation just to ruin a birthday party. As expected, the video continued to the point after Chloe and Leo had left. With the camera still focused on Julian and me, the audio was a little distorted from a distance, But Julian's grating voice came through clearly. You've got some nerve. Sticking around after all this. Ethan, if I were you, I'd have tucked my tail between my legs and disappeared by now. If I hadn't been sent abroad for a few years, do you really think you would have ever been Mr. Thompson? Look at yourself. Look at your clothes. You're a pathetic house husband. What makes you think you can compete with me? The vicious taunts continued one after another. You couldn't see my face clearly in the video, but Julian's twisted, snarling expression was perfectly visible on the screen. I remained impassive, but in the ballroom, the crowd erupted in shocked whispers. Who could have imagined that Julian, who always presented himself as a charming wealthy heir, was secretly acting like a homewrecker, taunting the husband to his face? But the biggest shock was yet to come. On the screen, Julian suddenly slapped himself hard across the face. A red mark appeared on his pale skin, and his eyes filled with tears, making him look utterly pathetic. Then he tearfully accused me of hitting him. A moment later, Chloe and Leo returned. They heard his accusation, saw the red mark on his face, and exploded. One of them began punching his own father, and when I tried to explain that I hadn't touched him, that there was security footage to prove it, all three of them simply walked away, ignoring my words completely. The murmuring in the room died down, and all eyes were fixed on the trio at the center of the drama. The Thompson Corporation was one of the most powerful institutions in New York, and most of the people in that room depended on the family's goodwill. They could whisper about the family's adopted son, but they wouldn't dare openly judge the CEO and her heir. But in their eyes, you could see a flicker of contempt. They looked down on Julian for his manipulative behavior, and they were disgusted with Chloe for believing him so easily, and with Leo for attacking his own father based on a lie. The three Thompsons at the center of it all were betrayed with humiliation. Chloe in particular looked mortified. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but, as she scanned the room, she still couldn't find the person she was looking for. She finally remembered that I hadn't arrived yet, which was why I'd asked her to deliver the gift for me. An overwhelming wave of guilt washed over her. Beside her, Leo was completely stunned. Leo had always hated me. Hated that I was his biological father. Chloe had told him that his grandfather had sent her true love away and forced her to marry me instead. She told him she had been forced. That hurt Rulov was her kind, innocent adoptive brother. But their love was forbidden, and she had no choice. So in Leo's mind, I was a thief, a villain who had stolen his mother away from the man she was meant to be with. Without me, his father would have been the kind and gentle Julian. But now, with this video playing for all to see, his entire understanding of good and evil was crumbling. He looked up at his mother, his anchor with lost eyes. So, he hadn't hit his uncle that day. He saw the same dawning confusion, reflected in his mother's eyes. Chloe's head snapped up, her gaze locking onto Julian, who was trying to quietly exit the stage. As if she had finally found a target for her fury, she unleashed it all on him. Why did you lie? I trusted you. Julian, how could you become this kind of person? Her face was a mask of anguish. Leo immediately echoed her. Yeah, Uncle Julian. Why did you lie to us? Weren't we good to you? Seeing them both turn on him, Julian stared in disbelief. But with all the guests watching, he swallowed his anger. No, it's not like that. Let me explain. Suddenly, a single person in the audience began to applaud, the sound startling everyone in the room. All heads turned trying to see who would be so bold. Chloe and Leo were also stunned for a moment before turning toward the sound. A woman stood up, a mocking smile playing on her lips. Well, we should all thank Mr. Clark for providing such wonderful entertainment. Recognizing the speaker, Chloe's face hardened, the anger in her eyes intensified. In that moment, on top of her anger at Julian's deception, she felt a surge of fury at me for making it all public. Why couldn't I have just explained it to her privately? Why did I have to humiliate them like this? When the other guests saw who was speaking, a collective sense of understanding dawned on them. The Thompsons had few rivals in New York, but the Bell family was one of them. And Isabella Bell had been Chloe's ever enemy since childhood, opposing her at every turn and delighting in her misfortune. Under the circumstances, she was the only one who would dare. Having enjoyed the show, Isabella casually turned and strolled out of the ballroom, not giving Chloe a chance to retaliate. With the party in ruins and Isabella leading the exodus, the other guests quickly made their excuses and departed. In the blink of an eye, the once bustling ballroom was empty, save for Chloe, Leo, and Julian. The party was over, and I still hadn't shown up. It was obvious now that I had separated from them with no intention of ever coming. Chloe finally understood. I had played them all, and now they were alone. Chloe's expression of anguish vanished, replaced by cold fury. She raised her hand, and the sharp crack of a slap echoed in the empty room. Julian's head snapped to the side from the force of the blow. After a stunned moment, his face twisted in disbelief. You hit me, Chloe. You actually hit me. Tears welled in his eyes. Real tears of shock and hurt this time. Not the crocodile tears from before. Meeting his wounded gaze, Chloe felt none of her previous sympathy. I saw you slap yourself earlier. I just assumed you enjoyed it. She smiled. But it was a cold, empty smile that didn't reach her eyes. As she finished speaking, Leo, his own eyes filled with tears, launched himself at Julian, beating on him with all his might. Julian cried out in pain. But Leo didn't stop. You're a liar. You lie to us. You're a bad guy. He had completely forgotten that just a short while ago, he had wished for this very man to be his father. As the only son of the Thompson CEO, he was the heir apparent to the entire corporation. He was used to being flattered and fawned over. When had anyone ever looked at him with such disdain? Finally, Julian couldn't take the beating anymore, and shoved Leo with all his strength. A 5-year-old boy was no match for an adult's desperate push, and he went flying. Julian, breathing heavily, used a table to pull himself to his feet. He looked at Chloe and Leo, and a strange, broken laugh escaped his lips. Chloe's brow furrowed. What's so funny? Her voice was filled with disgust, but also a hint of panic. My behavior lately had been so out of character. The old me would never have made such a public scene, no matter how angry I was. Of course, the old me was never angry at all. Just like at the party, when she had confessed her love for Julian in front of everyone. I had just stood there silently. The man who loved her so much would never do something to publicly humiliate himself, would he? Seeing her frown, Julian only laughed harder. What am I laughing at? I'm laughing at your hypocrisy. I'm laughing at how you and your son are both pathetic. He spat the words at them, then gave a self-deprecating chuckle. And I'm laughing at myself, forever believing people like you were capable of genuine emotion. Did I force you to believe me without question? Chloe, look at me. We loved each other. So what if I framed him? He's just some guy you married for convenience. A glorified housekeeper. Are you really going to treat me like this over him? Leo wanted to argue, but he didn't know what to say. He looked helplessly at his mother, searching for guidance. Chloe instinctively shot back at Julian. He's not just some guy we married. And he is not a housekeeper. After she spoke, Leo chimed in, his voice filled with righteous anger. Don't you talk about my dad like that. But Julian's expression, a mixture of surprise and mockery, made them both freeze. They realized they were defending me with words they themselves had used as insults. Julian scoffed. Chloe, don't tell me you've actually fallen in love with Ethan. And you, he said, turning to Leo, stop pretending to be the dutiful son. You think everyone has forgotten that on your birthday, you called him a housekeeper, and said your mother and I were the perfect match. A flicker of confusion crossed Chloe's mind. Was she in love with me? She glanced at Leo, who looked just as lost as she felt. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Leo's voice cracked. No, it's not like that. You tricked me. You lied and made us think Dad was hurting you. That's why I hated him. Tears streamed down his face as he looked up at his mother, desperate for her to agree. His words grew from a stutter into a confident roar. You agreed to his anger flaring up again. He grabbed a nearby vase and hurled it at Julian. Julian flinched, closing his eyes just as a sharp pain exploded near his temple. He reached up and his hand came away wet and warm. Julian was rushed to the hospital, but neither Chloe nor Leo spared him a second glance. They hurried home, their minds filled with questions they needed to ask me. But when they threw open the doors to the mansion, they found it empty. I was gone. They searched every room, the bedroom, the kitchen, the bathrooms, the backyard. They soon realized it wasn't just me who was gone. Every single thing that belonged to me had vanished. After a long, fruitless search, Leo tugged on Chloe's sleeve. His face crumpled in on the verge of tears. Mommy, did Daddy leave me? But Chloe had no time to comfort him. Her own mind was a tangled mess. She didn't know what to do. So she just kept dialing the same number from her contacts over and over. A number she had never even bothered to save with a name. After dialing it so many times, she had the number memorized. Each time, she was met with an automated message before the call disconnected. None of her calls were going through. I had blocked her number. Chloe stared at the number on her screen. Just then, her own phone began to ring. She looked at it eagerly, but her face fell when she saw the caller read. It was her grandfather. Mr. Thompson's voice was grave. Is Ethan gone? She didn't answer for a long moment, but even without her confirmation, he already knew the answer. It had been exactly a month since our contract ended, and news of the fiasco at Julian's birthday party had reached him. My departure was exactly what he had expected. He sighed heavily, his voice laced with disappointment. I told you from the beginning that you and Julian were impossible. You were never right for each other. When his child, I thought you had finally moved on from Julian, but in the end, Chloe, you have disappointed me more than I can say. Chloe's brow tightened, her grandfather's lecture making her frustration boil over. She was about to hang up when something, and his words caught her attention. Her eyes narrowed, and her voice turned to ice. You knew Ethan was leaving, didn't you? Did you send him away? Where is he? The questions tumbled out one after another, her voice rising with hysteria. The pain of being separated from her love 6 years ago came rushing back, and she unleashed all her pent-up frustration on her grandfather. She was so consumed by her own emotions that she didn't notice Leo letting go of her hand. He backed away, a look of fear in his eyes. He had never seen his mother like this before. To him, she was the calm, composed CEO, the impeccably dressed executive, a decisive no-nonsense mother. She was never the screaming, red-eyed stranger. It wasn't the first time she had lost control, and now even her grandfather was a target for her rage. He turned and slipped quietly out of the mansion. He wasn't going to just stand there and wait. He was going to find his dad. He didn't want this mother anymore. Chloe, lost in her own storm of emotions, didn't even notice he was gone. In the past, Mr. Thompson had felt a sliver of guilt for sending her Rues away, but now, she had driven away the man who loved her all on her own, leaving him with no way to intervene. This time, he would not protect her from the consequences. Mr. Thompson's voice was cold. This time, he left of his own accord. Or perhaps, Chloe, it's more accurate to say that you drove him away because you don't know how to love or respect another person. He snorted, tearing away the last of her delusions. You didn't actually think Ethan stayed with you all these years because he was in love with you, did you? Chloe froze. What are you talking about? A part of her screamed not to listen, and her thumb hovered over the end call button. But it was as if her grandfather could read her mind, and he laid out the whole truth before she could hang up. Ethan was never in love with you. He was repaying a debt to me. I sent him to you. He was a tool meant to act like he loved you, give you a child, and make you forget about Julian. I heard Julian was injured today, and you didn't even go to see him. He chuckled humorlessly, not waiting for a reply. It seems the boy's mission was a success after all. Before he left, he asked me to give you my blessing to be with Julian, and I agreed. So from now on, I won't interfere in your life. Though from the looks of it, you don't need my help to ruin it. The gloating in his voice was unmistakable. Chloe's face twisted in a pained grimace, but she refused to back down. I don't believe you, she hissed through clenched teeth. You're lying. Her grandfather's reply was nonchalant. Believe what you want. But his casual dismissal was more convincing than any argument, and her denial crumbled, replaced by a bottomless panic. He had never loved her. The thought, as stark and undeniable as the black and white contract he mentioned, hit her with the force of a physical blow, draining all the strength from her body. Are you satisfied with the truth now? Her grandfather asked. Chloe sat motionless like a statue. She was still the granddaughter in whom he had placed all his hopes. He had only told her the truth to shock her out of her stupor, to make her understand that she couldn't be so stubborn when it came to matters of the heart. When he spoke again, his tone was softer, but tinged with a deep disappointment. Chloe, I'm not trying to hurt you, but you've always been too impulsive, too extreme. You have to learn to cherish what's in front of you. Nothing and no one will wait for you forever. I kept this from you because I was afraid you couldn't handle it. But the truth is, if Julian had been stronger back then, if he hadn't panicked and taken the money to leave the country when I told him he'd have to give up the Thompson lifestyle to be with you, I would have given in. I would have found a way to make it work. But you were a purr, judge of character, willing to throw away the entire company for a man like that. And as for Ethan, if you had shown him even an ounce of genuine affection over these past 6 years, I don't believe he could have been so cold. I don't believe he would have just walked away from his own child. In the end, you failed him. If I were you, I wouldn't be sitting here wallowing in self-pity. I'd be out there finding him, explaining, trying to win him back, hiding by the doorway. Leo heard every word. The long conversation was hard for him to fully grasp, but one sentence stuck in his mind. In the end, you failed him. And that's why he left his own child. So, it was his mother's fault. It wasn't like she had always said that his dad was the only thing keeping her from Julian. All this time, he had been wrong about his dad. He had hurt the one person in the world who should have loved him most. All for someone else. Tears filled his eyes. And he turned and ran. 5 years later, Boston Logan International Airport. My rapid pace betrayed my agitated mood. Behind me, Isabella struggled to keep up, dragging a massive suitcase. Hey Ethan, wait for me, she called out. She didn't lower her voice, and while her shout didn't stop me, it did cause a woman who was just passing me to freeze. She whipped her head around, her eyes wide with shock, hardly daring to believe her ears. Was it just someone with the same name? Or was it really him? 1,000 thoughts raced through her mind as she studied my retreating form. In 6 years of marriage, we had never taken a single photo together. The gifts I had given her and Leo, I had thrown them all away. She had searched that enormous mansion countless times, only to finally accept the fact that I had erased every trace of myself from her life, leaving nothing behind. Now 5 years later, she had almost forgotten my face. That's why she hadn't recognized me when we passed each other. But hearing Isabella call my name had jogged her memory, and the more she looked, the more certain she became. The shock was so sudden that when she finally spoke my name, her voice was barely a whisper. Ethan. Even after 5 years, I recognized her voice instantly. It was Chloe, the woman I had been married to for 6 years, the woman who had been the source of my 6-year-long nightmare. I slowed my pace for a fraction of a second, and Isabella caught up. She glanced at the stunned Chloe and rolled her eyes. Before Chloe could react, Isabella took my hand and began leading me toward the exit. Don't be mad anymore, she said brightly. I made reservations at the Union Oyster House. We can go get dinner. Okay, hearing the name of my favorite restaurant, my frustration melted away. I didn't say anything, which was my silent way of agreeing. We both pretended not to see Chloe and continued on our way. She hurried after us, but the sight of Isabella holding my hand made her stop short. It was finally dawning on her that my relationship with Isabella was not just casual. She couldn't tell if she was angry or hurt, but before her mind could decide, her body acted on its own. Ethan. Wait, she had meant to stop me, but her call only made us walk faster. She watched as Isabella and I got into a waiting car without a moment's hesitation. The door slammed shut, and the car sped away, leaving her in a cloud of exhaust. She lowered her arm, defeated, just as the voice of a business partner crackled from her phone. Miss Thompson, are you there? By the time Chloe snapped back to reality, the line was dead. She ignored it, her fingers flying across her screen as she dialed another number. I want a full report on Isabella Bell, where she's been for the past 5 years, what she's been doing, and when she got in touch with Ethan. Her assistant was confused by the sudden interest in Isabella, until she heard the last part of the sentence. Her heart skipped a beat, and she quickly agreed to the request. My own movements were kept private by the Institute, but Isabella's were public record. After 5 years of searching for me with no success, Chloe had a complete dossier from her assistant in just 3 hours. I had met Isabella 2 years ago. Like the other scientists at the Institute, I spent most of my time buried in my work. The only time we left was when our supervising professor worried we'd go stir crazy would literally lock us out of the lab and force us to take a vacation. Other than that, the only time I left was to accept awards. 2 years ago, I was on an overseas trip with some senior colleagues when I got separated from the group. While I was waiting for them, I ran into Isabella. She approached me with a casual swagger, then froze for a second when she saw my face. Her intense stare made me wary, and I cautiously backed away without a word. When my colleagues found me, I warned them about her. They questioned her, and she vaguely claimed to know me. Since I insisted I had never seen her before, they assumed she was some kind of con artist and had her taken to the local police station. It was a rather eventful way to meet someone. Once the misunderstanding was cleared up, we started seeing more of each other. She was clearly interested in me from the start. a development our professor was thrilled about, often lamenting that my other colleagues weren't as forward. Isabella played her cards perfectly, giving me enough space so I never felt smothered, but staying present enough that I never forgot about her. It all felt very natural. She chose the night of the first snowfall to tell me how she felt. Fireworks exploded overhead, illuminating the blanket of fresh snow. There was no one else around. For a moment, it felt like we were the only two people in the world. Ethan, she said, I'm falling for you. Let's be together. She made it feel special, but without any pressure. I looked at her, hesitating. I lowered my gaze, my voice a little rough. I've been married. I have a son. Why would you want someone like me? Isabella had thought about this long before she decided to confess. Unlike Chloe, Isabella had known the truth about me from the very beginning. I wasn't some lovesick admirer or a pawn in a family arrangement. I was the man who had willingly signed a 6-year contract to repay a debt. She had watched from the sidelines for 6 years as I devoted myself to caring for Chloe, raising our son, and trying my best to be a good husband and father. She had seen me endure being framed time and again by the man Chloe loved. And still I had stayed. Back then, she had assumed I had genuinely fallen in love with Chloe. She had felt a mix of pity and envy. Envy that Chloe had a grandfather who cared so much for her future, and a husband who loved her so deeply. It wasn't until the disaster at Julian's birthday party that she realized how wrong she had been. When she saw me again after I had left, the quiet, submissive man she had known was gone. Now just by standing in a room, I commanded attention. She was drawn to me, and as she got closer, her interest grew into something more. She was sure of her feelings now. It wasn't a whim, and it wasn't some childish competition with Chloe. It was because of me, the real me. Ethan, I know all of it, she said. And because I know, I also know that I'm falling for you. And none of that changes it. I'm doing this because I like you. And for no other reason. The sincerity in her eyes was so profound. I couldn't bring myself to turn her away. Because of that 6-year contract. Because of Chloe's closed heart. Because the son I had raised had grown to despise me. I had started to believe I wasn't cut out for family life. But looking into her eyes now, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could try again. The worst that could happen was a repeat of the past. So I took her hand. A real smile spread across my face. A smile that seemed to catch her by surprise. Everything felt right. I accepted. And we became a couple. After that, she was always by my side. And today was our 1-year anniversary. The reason I had been agitated earlier was because I had just found out that Isabella had pulled several all-nighters just to clear her schedule to come to Boston and celebrate with me. I was just worried about her. And now, as Chloe stared at the files and photos from her assistant, she saw a version of me she had never known. Vibrant, happy, alive, a complex, a sour feeling like a vat of vinegar tipping over, churned in her stomach. What was even harder to swallow was the fact that Isabella was now my girlfriend. As she was nothing. She looked at our divorce certificate, overcome with a regret more intense than any she had ever felt. Why had she given me that signed agreement on our wedding day? Why in all those 6 years had she never once tried to build a real life with me? Why when Julian returned, did she and Leo have to push me away? If she hadn't, she wouldn't be in this position now, finally seeing me again, but with no right to even speak to me. And I had long since moved on and started a new life. I was, of course, completely oblivious to Chloe's inner turmoil. At that moment, I was sitting in a private booth at the Union Oyster House, being personally waited on by the CEO of Bell Industries. She served me a piece of perfectly cooked lobster still, steaming, which I dipped in a sauce she had mixed herself. The warmth spread through me, chasing away the Boston chara. But her eyes never left my face. Her constant staring made me self-conscious, and I playfully tapped her hand. Eat your food. Why are you staring at me? Even so, she didn't look away. She just smiled, her face radiant. Because you're handsome, she said. We ate and joked. And before we knew it, an hour had passed. Just as we were about to leave, the door to our booth was thrown open. I frowned, annoyed, assuming it was a waiter. I was about to ask why they hadn't knocked, when I looked up and saw Chloe standing in the doorway. Beside her stood Leo, not all enough to reach her waist. In the 5 years since I'd last seen him, he had grown from a small child into a young boy. His features had changed, and he had a more reserved air about him. No longer the loud, impulsive child I remembered. He looked like a little man, even though I didn't seek it out. News about them always found its way to me. There were stories in the business journals about Chloe's devotion to her late husband's memory, and about how Leo was already showing signs of his mother's sharp intellect. I never commented on these stories. But, whenever they came up, someone would inevitably remind me of how they had once condemned me based on a lie. Now seeing them both in person, the passage of time felt real. Leo was so grown up. Isabella noticed my distraction. She squeezed my hand, then slid from her seat across the table to the one next to me. The move was a clear display of possession. When she looked up at Chloe, her eyes were full of challenge. I didn't stop her. Instead, I pulled my gaze away from Leo and shifted even closer to her. That small movement was all it took. Leo's eyes instantly turned red. He pouted, his voice thick with hurt. "Daddy, I missed you so much. Why did you never come look for me?" He looked like a lost, abandoned child. His voice choked with helpless sobs. The other diners in the restaurant began to notice the commotion and turned to stare. Chloe, sensing the eyes on them, quickly ushered Leo into our booth and shut the door, closing us off from the rest of the restaurant. The moment they were inside, Leo tried to rush toward me, but Isabella quickly blocked his path. "Hey, what do you think you're doing? We can talk, but keep your hands to yourself." Leo glared at her, his face flushed with anger. "He's my father. Who are you to keep me away from him?" He spoke with such conviction. The moment he had learned my whereabouts, he had rushed to Boston, terrified that if he was too slow, he would lose me again. In his 5 years with his great-grandfather, he had learned many things, including how to hide his true intentions. He had pretended to be the perfect, obedient great-grandson to trick Mr. Thompson into letting him take the private jet to Boston. On the way, he had imagined our reunion 1,000 times. He imagined I would be filled with regret, or that I would still be angry, but that if he just apologized sincerely enough, I would forgive him. But he was wrong. I remained where I was, subtly shifting away from him as he approached. I slowly shook my head. "I'm not your father, Leo. Have you forgotten who you chose to be your father?" The color drained from his face. Chloe quickly stepped forward and took Leo's hand, her voice laced with disapproval. "Ethan, I know you're still angry with us, but he's just a child. He didn't know any better back then. He made mistakes. But isn't the important thing that he's learned from them? Why are you saying such hurtful things to him?" I finally looked up, meeting her eyes for the first time since she had arrived. "Miss Thompson, we're divorced. We are not on a first-name basis. Please call me Mr. Miller from now on. Otherwise, my girlfriend might get jealous." I drew a clear line between us with my cold, formal tone, the casual mention of my girlfriend. The blow landed like a hammer blow. She had seen the report, but hearing the words from my own lips was a different kind of pain. My expression was neutral, but she seemed to be lost in a memory. It was as if she was seeing a scene from our past, but with the roles reversed. Back then, she had been the one with all the power. She had been the one to keep me at arm's length. I had been the one who asked for nothing. No wedding, no honeymoon, just a marriage certificate and a ring. And she had been the one to condescendingly hand me a signed divorce agreement, saying, "I know you love me, but my heart belongs to someone else. I only married you because of family pressure. I've already signed this. If you ever want to leave, just add your signature and you're free." She had been so confident then, so sure of herself. She probably never imagined that one day she would be the one begging for a second chance. She was finally feeling what I must have felt back then. A bitter, self-mocking smile touched her lips. But no, that wasn't right. Why would I have been hurt? I was only there to repay a debt. She had offered me an easy way out. I should have been happy. Chloe opened her mouth to speak, but her throat was dry. From the very beginning, she and Leo had never truly been a part of my world. But Leo wouldn't give up. "Daddy, do you really not want me anymore?" I was growing tired of this. I took Isabella's hand and stood up to leave, but as we tried to pass, Leo grabbed my arm and burst into tears. "Daddy, I know I was wrong. It was all my fault. I'm so sorry. Please, Daddy, just give me one more chance. I swear I'll be good. I'll listen to you. Please don't leave me." Chloe moved to block my path, her eyes red-rimmed. "Ethan, it was my fault. I didn't know my own heart, and I took advantage of your love to hurt you." "No, that's not right. It wasn't love. Her grandfather told me everything. You were only with me to repay a debt." She fought to keep hurt ears at bay, her eyes turning a painful shade of red. Ethan, Leo, and I both know we were wrong. Can you please forgive us? Give us one more chance to start over. This time, you don't have to love us. Just come back. We'll do anything you want. Leo nodded eagerly. Daddy, the key to the safe you gave me. I found it. I looked inside. I saw all the presents you left for me. For all my future birthdays. I've been good. I only open one each year. You didn't want to leave me, did you? Please come back. He blinked up at me. His eyes widened, pleading. I was surprised to hear him mention the safe. I thought I had gotten rid of everything. Then I remembered that I had tossed the key, so I hadn't bothered with the safe itself. I never would have guessed that Leo, who had thrown the key away without a second thought, would have gone back to find it, while I was lost in thought. Isabella spoke up, her voice sharp with annoyance. Am I invisible? Trying to steal my boyfriend right in front of my face. Chloe, when did I ever give you the impression I was a pushover? Chloe ignored her completely, her eyes still fixed on me, waiting for my answer, her heart pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. As for Isabella, they were already rivals. What did it matter if she hated her a little more? All she wanted now was me. Besides, Isabella must have known about my past with them when she started pursuing me. As they argued, I looked down at Leo. He was still clinging to my arm, his eyes begging me to stay. 5 years ago, before Julian came back, if they had begged me like this, I might have given in. But after everything that had happened, they were no longer the center of my world. Family is important, but my own well-being is more important. No one is obligated to wait around forever for you to get your act together. Before I was a father, I was a person. I gently pried Leo's fingers from my arm and shook my head. Speaking to both of them, I lost myself for a very long time. Now I've not only found myself again, I found someone who truly fits with me. Why would I give all that up just because you're sorry now? I left with Isabella. As Chloe started to follow, her phone rang. It was her grandfather. OmniCorp couldn't get a hold of you, so they called me. Chloe, who taught you to let your personal life interfere with business? You just stood up a major partner. Only then did Chloe remember the real reason she was in Boston. Business. If the deal with OmniCorp went through, it would open up the entire New England market for the Thompson Corporation, taking the company to a new level. And now she was hours late for the meeting. She stood there silently, watching as Isabella and I disappeared into the distance, a bitter resentment churning inside her. Leo looked up at her, his eyes asking the question she couldn't answer. Why weren't they following us? On the phone, her grandfather changed the subject. Is Leo with you? Yes, she said, not bothering to lie. After all, Leo had taken her grandfather's private jet to get to Boston. It wasn't hard to track him. His voice was laced with disapproval, directed at her, at Leo, and at me. So you took the boy and you saw him. What did he say? What are you planning to do now? Don't you understand? I sent him to you to help you get over Julian, not so you could turn him into your next obsession. The threat was clear. If Chloe continued to let her personal life interfere with the company, he would intervene again. Leo overheard the last part of the conversation, and having been raised by the old man, he understood the implication immediately. Don't you dare hurt my daddy, he shouted into the phone. Mr. Thompson's voice was stern. If you care so much about Ethan, then instead of yelling at me, you should be on the next plane home and tell that foolish mother of yours to get her priorities straight. Chloe frowned, her voice sharp with defiance. You were the one who told me to go. Find him to explain, to apologize. How can you now accuse me of having my priorities mixed up? What was important, what wasn't? What could wait and what was urgent? Why did her entire life have to revolve around the company? Why could her grandfather send away the man she loved, force her into a marriage, and now tell her she couldn't even try to win back the man she had lost, that she had to just go back to work? Her grandfather was furious. He couldn't believe she was twisting the advice he had given her 5 years ago. I said that to pull you out of your depression. Chloe, don't forget who you are. You are the CEO of the Thompson Corporation. Your every action reflects on this company. For the first time, Chloe felt a certainty in her heart, a resolve even stronger than when she had been willing to give up everything for Julian. I told you back then, and I'll tell you again. I don't want this position. A feeling of helplessness washed over him. For the first time, Mr. Thompson began to wonder where he had gone wrong in raising such a stubborn, irrational granddaughter. After a long silence, he laughed. Do you really think you're irreplaceable? Fine, if you're determined to ruin your life. I won't stop you. But you will put Leo on a plane back here today. The threat was clear. But to Chloe, it felt like a reprieve. She let out a long breath. I'll send him back right now. The next morning, I woke up and habitually reached for my phone to check the time. The moment I unlocked it, a flood of missed call notifications poured in. So many that my phone lagged for a second. My first thought was that something had happened at the institute. I jumped out of bed, rushed through my morning routine, and was about to head out the door. Isabella heard the commotion and came out of the kitchen, seeing my frantic state. She looked concerned. What's wrong? What's the rush? She handed me a glass of warm milk. Here, have something before you go. I took a sip. My hair still a mess. And explained. I just saw I have a ton of missed calls. I think something's wrong at the lab. I have to go check. As I said it, I realized something wasn't right. My apartment was right next to the institute. If there was a real emergency, my colleagues wouldn't have just called. They would have been banging on my door hours ago. They wouldn't have just given up. The realization eased my tension, and I let out a long breath. Now that I was calm, I could actually check to see who had been calling. Isabella, amused by my panic, sat down at the table and brought me a plate of eggs. Well, since it's not the lab, you can eat while you figure it out. The calls were from several different numbers, each one having called multiple times. I couldn't tell if it was a prank or a real emergency. I switched over to my messages and saw a long list of unread texts. Each one said the same thing. Leo is missing. My mind went blank. Missing. What did that mean? But the text explained the frantic calls. It was Chloe. I quickly scrolled back and called the first number. She answered on the first ring. What happened? I demanded. A wave of bitterness washed over Chloe, but she didn't waste any time. Grandfather told me to send Leo back, so I put him on the plane. But the housekeeper said he never arrived. Then the security detail I sent with him showed up, saying he had been kidnapped. Ethan, I'm so sorry. I failed to protect our son. Chloe's heart was a maelstrom of conflicting emotions. She was furious that someone had dared to kidnap her son right under her and her grandfather's noses. But she was also heartbroken that it took something this terrible to make me call her. I frowned, a knot of anxiety tightening in my stomach. Leo's been kidnapped, Isabella asked, sitting down beside me with her own breakfast. She had overheard Chloe's voice on the phone. She hesitated for a moment, then asked, Is he in New York? Do you need my help? It wasn't that she cared about the Thompson family's problems, but she knew that Leo was my son. I might have been hurt by his past actions, and I might not have been ready to forgive him. But if he was in real danger, I couldn't just stand by and do nothing. I wasn't that heartless. Thank you, I said. But before Isabella could even begin to make some calls, Chloe received a text from an unknown number. The message was short. I have Leo. If you want him back alive, meet me at Eastville Harbor tomorrow at noon. If you call the cops, he dies with me. My heart leapt into my throat. A kidnapper who didn't want money. What could he possibly want? Isabella and I were on the next flight to New York. The next day, at noon sharp, we arrived at Eastville Harbor. The water was calm. The larger ships were all out, leaving only a single small boat tied to the dock, bobbing on the gentle waves. On the boat were two figures, one large and one small. The kidnapper and his victim, we all recognized him instantly. It was Julian. Chloe's face contorted in a furious scowl. Julian, what the hell do you think you're doing? At the sound of her voice, Julian turned. The long jagged scar near his eye was stark and ugly in the midday sun. He froze for a second when he saw the three of us. Then a wild, crazed look entered his eyes. Ethan, you came back too. As his gaze fixed on me, both Chloe and Isabella instinctively moved to stand in front of me. Just tell us what you want, Julian, Chloe said. What will it take for you to let Leo go? Seeing me shielded by both women, Julian felt a surge of jealousy so intense it was almost a physical blow. Rage burned in his chest, and the hatred in his eyes was a palpable force. He couldn't understand it. They had both been cast out by the Thompson family, so why was his life in ruins while mine was not? That scar on his face never had to happen. But the Thompsons had been ruthless, patching him up just enough to throw him out of the hospital. He had been disowned, his assets frozen. He was left with a permanent scar and nowhere to go, forced to survive on scraps from garbage cans. In me, I was wearing designer clothes, looking better than I ever had when I was with the Thompsons. And to top it all off, both Chloe and Isabella were protecting me. He couldn't stand it. You want to know what I want? Julian said, holding a knife to Leo's throat. I have two conditions. Meet them and I'll let the boy go. First, you will marry me. Second, you will trade Ethan for him. His eyes were locked on Chloe, placing the choice squarely in her hands. A heavy silence fell, broken only by the whistling of the wind. Handing me over was not an option. Not for Chloe. Not for Isabella. But they couldn't just abandon Leo either. After a moment of tense silence, Isabella shook her head. The first condition is negotiable. The second is not. Pick something else. Chloe looked ready to explode at Isabella's words, but a shared glance between Isabella and me silenced her. Julian saw Chloe's hesitation and his own resolve hardened. The standoff continued, until Julian's eyes suddenly narrowed with suspicion. You're stalling for time, aren't you? He snarled. I told you what would happen if you called the police. By the end of his threat, his voice was trembling. Her calm composure was making him nervous. The hand holding the knife tightened, and the sudden pain woke Leo from his stupor. He began to scream. Daddy, help me. His terrified scream sent a jolt through my heart. My own heart was pounding in my chest. I could only pray the police snipers had a clear shot. I would not trade my life for his. Julian hadn't expected Leo to wake up, and the boy's frantic cries were grating on his nerves. Shut up. If you don't shut up, I'll kill you. He glanced over at us to see our reaction. And in that moment, he saw the glint of a rifle scope aimed directly at him. He was no hardened criminal. The sight of the gun sent a wave of pure terror through him, and his hand began to shake uncontrollably. He didn't want to die. Panic clouded his thoughts. He tightened his grip on the knife, his only leverage, and tried to make himself a smaller target. He frantically searched for a way out, and his eyes met mine. He saw the worry I was trying so hard to conceal. A desperate, insane idea took root in his mind. If he was going to die today, he would take everyone down with him. Leo's cries continued, but Julian no longer seemed to notice. He looked at us, his voice eerily calm. I know you called the police, so I've changed my mind. I want all of you on this boat. When we get somewhere safe, I'll leave. Having made his decision, his mind felt preternaturally clear. After a moment's hesitation, Chloe was the first to step onto the boat. Isabella and I followed right behind her, watching Julian use Leo as a human shield. A terrible premonition washed over me. The feeling grew stronger as we got closer. Just as we reached the edge of the dock, I grabbed Isabella's arm. I had a feeling he wasn't just planning to escape. Just as I whispered my warning, Chloe stepped onto the boat. A second later, Julian lunged. There was a sickening sound as the knife plunged into Chloe's throat. A gunshot rang out. I whipped my head around just in time to hear 3 distinct splashes as bodies hit the water. The crying stopped. The police and rescued divers who had been lying in wait swarmed the area. More splashes following as they dove in. When my head cleared, all I could see was the pool of blood on the empty boat and the rescued divers tethered by ropes, searching the dark water. I tried to speak. Leo, is he? But before I could finish, a crushing weight settled on my chest. My vision went black, and I collapsed. The last thing I heard was Isabella's fading cry. When I woke up, 2 days had passed. The sharp, sterile smell of antiseptic disoriented me for a moment. I couldn't remember the last time I had been in a hospital. I flexed my fingers slightly, and the movement woke Isabella, who had been asleep in the chair beside my bed, her hand holding mine. The television on the wall was playing the news, and a stark headline scrolled across the bottom of the screen. Former Thompson heir's revenge plot ends in tragedy. CEO and son dead after harbor incident. Her eyes followed my gaze to the screen, and she quickly fumbled for the remote to change the channel. But every station she flipped to was covering the same story. She turned the TV off with an awkward grimace, annoyed with herself for not having done it sooner. I shook my head. It's not your fault. The truth was, none of this had anything to do with Isabella. Julian's resentment was a consequence of Chloe and Leo's own actions. They were now facing the outcome they had created, and there was no one else to blame. After a moment of silence, I looked up, my voice weak. I want to go see that. With death, everything was over. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust. Whatever was between us, the debts and the affections was finally gone. I never got to see Chloe and Leo one last time. Mr. Thompson stopped us outside the funeral home. His eyes were clouded with grief as he waved us away. Go home, he said, his voice raspy. Just go home. He was an old man forced to bury his own kin. He didn't know who to blame. The tangled web of love and hate that had led to their deaths, or his own old-fashioned stubbornness that had pushed them all to this tragic end. In the long night, fireworks lit up the city sky. But this new year, with all its celebration, was not for them.